Today we're going to do some logical reasoning. In particular, we're going to look at some logical reasoning assumption questions. We're going to use the June 2007 LSAT. It was published for free online as a PDF file by LSAC.org. If you want to download it now, you can, but I think you'll be able to follow the discussion even without the paper itself. I'll be turning to page 7, which is section 2, question 6. And as I do for all LSAT questions, I read the question first. The argument's conclusion follows logically if which of the following is assumed. So we're looking for what your friends might call a sufficient assumption. But what we're going to do is we're going to follow the structure of the argument. It says an undergraduate degree is necessary for appointment to the executive board. So that means if you're on the executive board, you have to have an undergraduate degree because an undergraduate degree is required for appointment to the executive board. And no one with a felony conviction can be appointed to the board. Aren't you reassured? Thus, Murray, an accountant with both a bachelor's and a master's, cannot be accepted to the position of executive administrator since he has a felony conviction. What we use is a strategy that we call the exhausted element strategy. Exhausted elements takes advantage of what arguments are about. They're linkages between elements and linkages between elements. And we look to see which elements have been used at least twice. Well, felony showed up here. Felony showed up here. What more work do you want felony to do, even if it's illegal? He's exhausted. Then we've got undergraduate degree. And then we've got both a bachelor's and a master's. I guess those have been exhausted in the argument too. They've been used twice. So we don't need any more work from them. Now look at the answers. Answer A is about the felony and a master's degree. Answer C is about an undergraduate degree. Answer D is about a felony. And answer E is about a felony. All of those include the exhausted elements. Only answer B is worth looking at. And it says only candidates eligible for appointment to the executive board can be accepted for the position of executive administrator. Did you notice that these things were only mentioned once and the argument wouldn't make any sense unless they were connected? So B comes to the rescue and says, we'll give it to you. We'll give you really extreme word like only that you don't really need, but if we give it to you, you're going to win, because that means if you're eligible to be appointed to the executive board, you're eligible to be appointed to the executive administrator position, and they're the only people, so therefore if you couldn't do it here, you can't do it here, and that makes the argument coherent. But we didn't have to tell nobody about the wrong answers that included the exhausted elements, because nobody cares. Now we can use the same technique on another assumption question that people probably found a lot harder. It was again from the June 2007 LSAT. It was published for free as a PDF file by the Law School Admission Council at lsac.org. This time we'll turn to section 3, page 19, question 17. Which of the following is an assumption required by the argument? Did you notice the difference? This assumption is required by the argument, or else the argument won't fit together. Now, the first thing we notice as we look at this passage is that the conclusion is actually at the top. How do we know that? Because in the second sentence it says, after all. That's not going to introduce a conclusion. And then after the comma it says, since That's a phrase that's going to introduce some evidence. So the conclusion is, when exercising the back muscles, it is important to maintain a healthy back, to exercise the muscles on the opposite sides of the spine equally. What's the evidence? After all, balanced muscle development is needed for a healthy back. So that means if you've got a healthy back, you must have had balanced muscle development because that's needed. And since the muscles on opposite sides of the spine must pull equally, muscles on the opposite spine must pull equally in opposite directions for proper alignment and to protect the spine. Looks to me like that's related to healthy back, doesn't it to you? Looks to me like healthy back has done a lot of work in this argument. It's up here, it's down there, then we're talking about proper alignment. Let's look at the answers. Answer A is talking about proper alignment. Answer C is talking about a healthy back. Answer D is talking about a back that's irreparably damaged. That doesn't sound healthy. And answer E is talking about proper alignment. Look at what answer B tells me. Exercising muscles on opposite sides of the spine unequally, which means they're taking this and negating it, leads to unbalanced muscle development, which means they're negating that. Did you notice they only mentioned that once? They only mentioned that once. In order to connect this argument up and make it a logical argument, we need to connect those two elements up. Now the nerds connected it up with a contrapositive. It says, if you don't do this, you're not going to get this, so therefore you need to do this in order to get that. That's different than telling nobody about the wrong answers because nobody cares. And it's different than trying to guess what the assumption is. Assumptions are not outside the argument, they're not under the argument, they're not what you were thinking when you made the argument. They're connections between elements and arguments that weren't yet made. That's how the exhausted element makes it so obvious. But then we can take advantage of other basic idea in our course that they wrote the right answer first and then they disguised it. So if they wrote answer B first, exercising muscles on opposite sides of the spine unequally, look at what happens with answer D. If the muscles on opposite sides of the spine are exercised unequally, they begin almost the same way. Answer D talks about irreparably damaged, and that's not in the passage. I don't need to add anything to that. That's outside the argument. But answer B is the two things that are inside the argument that need to be connected up. The exhausted element exposes the two things, and answer D makes me feel a lot better because that was probably the second answer written, and then it's a 5-answer question, so they had to come up with 3 other wrong answers because a lot of your friends tell nobody what's wrong about the wrong answers, and nobody cares.